Hi, welcome to City Scene with Mayor Mike Cahill. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski. And Mike, welcome.
Thank you, Walt. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. This is our first show of 2015.
It is.
Huh? And, you know, it's only been a week. We're only a week into the year, but there are a couple of major developments that have happened that affect the city of Beverly, and I'd like to have you discuss those and bring our audience up to date. And the first one is that the state coastal zone management has made a draft recommendation or decision to remove the designated port area designation from Beverly. Can you remind our viewers what that means? What is a designated port area?
Sure. Gosh, about 35 years ago, the state passed a law that was intended to protect marine industrial uses, to protect that economy on waterfronts. And they created 13 designated port areas around the state, Beverly being one of them. You know, these included Fall River, New Bedford, Quincy, Boston, Gloucester, and most of those designated port areas still have significant marine industrial uses on them. Beverly's really didn't, at the time that the law was passed, had in some fashion 50, 60, 70 years ago, where the Tuck Point condos are. There used to be an offloading site for gas and oil and chemicals that I'm not sure who owned it, but it was one of the major oil companies, and they used to offload there and sell materials from there. And then over where the McDonald's property is, the old McDonald's restaurant, used to be a big coal yard. But those uses went out, I think, before I was born, certainly, a long time ago. And so when the law was passed, we really didn't have any remaining uses that fit the description. I should, not say it exactly that way. Commercial fishing fits.
Sure.
And we do have some commercial fishing. But most of what is considered our designated port area, it starts over around the corner by Silver Court with some single-family residential homes. Right. Then it includes our pump station sending our outflow to the sewer plant in Salem. It includes the public beach. It includes the yacht club, Jubilee Yacht Club, the condos, a couple of privately owned docks, and then the Port Marine has 2 parcels, and then it includes our McDonald's property. So most of that area hadn't been used in a marine industrial way for a long, long time. We started, well, why don't I stop there?
Well, I was going to ask you, I guess the logical question now is, there was a reason why we asked the state to look at this. So what does the removal of this designated port area designation mean for Beverly and for the development, the future development of the waterfront?
So the reason we're talking about it today is that earlier this week, the state, that being Coastal Zone Management, they're the state agency that administers the designated port areas. And they filed a draft decision recommending that they remove entirely our designated port area, i.e. it would no longer be a designated port area. Now, there are some next steps before it becomes a final decision, and I'll touch on those quickly. First, they have a public hearing scheduled for January 22nd. I believe it's at 6 in the evening at City Hall.
Okay.
People can come and listen to their explanation of their draft decision and comment on it. The comment period runs until, I believe it's February 5th. And after that, they will have 60 days in which to file a final decision. So over the next 30 days, it's public comment, public hearing, and then they'll make their final decision. And we're hopeful that the final decision will memorialize the draft decision. It'll be a reaffirmation of that.
So very specifically, what does that allow us to do now? How does that free us up where before that we couldn't do certain things,
Right.
Now we can? Tell us about that.
Yes, the DPA meant that the only uses that were allowed, the only new uses, I mean, if something was already happening a certain way before the DPA was put in place, it could go on, but the only new uses could be marine industrial type of uses. And interestingly, recreational boating doesn't even fit within that. Commercial boating does, recreational doesn't. So what's going on right now down at our waterfront? We have some commercial fishing, specifically lobstering. We have recreational boating. We have, people fish off the end of our pier. We have a limited amount of public access, and then that's really the extent of it. What we can do with the DPA being lifted, we are in the process at the same time of writing a new zoning ordinance for our waterfront. And we started that at the same time as we made application to the state to remove the DPA. We wanted to be ready. So we're in the process of that. I know that our planning department is working hard to have a draft proposed ordinance in front of the public by the end of the month so we can have some feedback and conversation with the public, and then take that draft, make it a proposed final ordinance, and put it in front of the city council so they can consider it. That'll all be happening over the next 30 to 60 days. What we can do differently if the DPA ultimately is eliminated, and if we change our zoning, we're looking at adding uses to the waterfront. The commercial fishing is of great value and great importance, and I want to make sure that we protect it, and in fact would like to try to make an effort to increase it. We have a lot of recreational boating. I'd like to see the opportunity to increase that as well. And to that end, we're going to approach the federal regulators about perhaps moving the federal channel lines to allow for more commercial and recreational boat slips, if possible. That's separate from the DPA. But the other thing, probably the other main thing that I think we can see there, two things: greater public access, because now with an opportunity to redevelop the waterfront comes the requirement that whoever does any redeveloping provide public access right across the right across the waterfront.
Sure.
So we're envisioning a much more significant public space down there, and in fact a pathway the whole length of the waterfront.
Sure.
And in addition to that, the ability to have mixed use redevelopment.
Right.
First floor commercial and retail, shops, restaurants, perhaps some second and third floor residential. So that's really the vision that I think has been kind of collectively come together in the community. I've run for office 3 times in the last 6 years, for council in 2009 and mayor in 2011 and 13. Knocked on a lot of doors, sat in a lot of neighborhood and community meetings, and in the last year in office have met with and listened to a lot of people. There is a pent-up demand and desire that goes back decades for the public to have more on our waterfront, to bring us down there, to attract us and bring us and to enjoy it every day of the year.
Right. And so thank you for explaining that to us, and I think that'll let our viewers know that our Beverly's hands kind of won't be shackled to just promoting commercial fishing type uses as required by the designated port.
And I will say, if I could, just the more variety of uses that we have at the waterfront, I think the more people will be interested in being down there.
Yeah, I think so.
And at the same time, we're going to need to protect those existing uses so that nobody tries to kind of squeeze them out. Yeah. And that's a part of what we're looking carefully at, making sure that the proposed zoning will help to ensure that. We also know that as we attract more people down to the waterfront, we're going to need to address things like traffic. We're going to need to have ways to get people down to the waterfront in addition to them driving. And one of my hopes for our downtown as a whole is that now that the Larkham Theater is doing well and the Cabot is up and running,
right.
And as we see more development around the depot, Beverly Depot area, with the T garage, and we think we're anticipating seeing more residential development in that area. Then we look at the waterfront, and my hope is before too long we'll see a shuttle running throughout the downtown, and we'll be looking at how that might best be achieved and funded. But the idea that people can get off the train and step onto a shuttle and take the shuttle to the waterfront and have dinner, get back on the shuttle and come up to Cabot Street to go to a show. Those kinds of things will be good. We will at the same time need to address and provide for more parking. Maybe not right at the waterfront, but certainly within a couple minutes walk from it. It may be lower Cabot or Rantoul Street. It may be right down along the waterfront. But there will need to be more parking as we bring more people and more uses to the waterfront.
Yeah. Wonderful. I think that's well said, Michael. Thank you for that.
Thanks.
And the second item that has been in the Salem news here in the last week or so is the report by the Regional Emergency Call Center, the so-called RECC out in Middleton, out of the Sheriff's Office there, has reported that Beverly will not be participating in that RECC combined call center. Can you kind of elaborate on this? What's going on there?
Sure. So just a bit of history. About 6 years ago, the former mayor went to the city council at the time and got their approval to enter into an agreement to be part of this regional effort to regionalize the answering of emergency calls and the dispatch of of first responders to those calls. The discussion back then was among communities throughout Essex County. At one point, there were 15 or 16 communities that had expressed some level of interest in the conversation. Ultimately, 6 communities decided to be part of the effort, Beverly being one. As I said, the former mayor went to the council in 2009, got their approval. He then entered into what they call an intermunicipal agreement, I think it was what it was called, with the sheriff. So the former mayor and the sheriff in 2010 signed this agreement. Since I've been in office, and this is now the third day of my second year, so just about a year, we've worked closely with the folks over at the rec in the sheriff's department and his leadership team at the rec. And we've worked carefully internally to understand where we are. The rec was supposed to, in the agreement that they entered into with the former mayor, they held out that they would be fully on board. They would have all their 6-member communities on board by sometime in 2012. Here we are in January of 2015, and they are not yet ready for the city of Beverly. And I just want to be clear, the question of readiness, which was a little unclear in the newspaper articles, we have been told in the past year, we've been told, I think, 3 different dates that they were targeting for us to start coming over. And start coming over is a kind of a vague term. We answer phone calls at our police station. That's where the calls come in. They will send to the ambulance service if we need an ambulance to go. They'll send police cruisers in response, and they'll forward over to the fire alarm operators for them to send out fire apparatus. That's how our system works locally. So in order for the rec to be ready for us, they would need to take on 3 separate operations and make the infrastructure and the IT all ready for that transition. We currently, I believe, offer a very high quality service. There's nothing. We do a lot of things that are important in city government. I don't think there's anything more important than the ability to respond quickly and effectively to life-threatening situations, and that's what we're talking about. Somebody calls 911. Somebody's injured, somebody's sick, there's a motor vehicle accident, there's some type of violent crime. When those emergency calls come in, this is about getting the information in and getting the right response out there as quickly as possible. And so, because there were these repeated delays where the rec hasn't been ready. And when I say haven't been ready, they have been taking on one community at a time, and they decided, and it makes some sense, they would take on the smallest communities first and then go up from there.
Makes sense, yeah.
Well, the membership is meant to be 6 communities. Beverly is the largest of the communities. When you take the other 5 communities, they're about the same size as Beverly together. It's, I don't want to get this wrong, it's Topsfield, Wenham, Essex, Middleton, and the city of Amesbury. But when you take all the population together, it's not much more. It's about the same as our population as a city. So the rec was taking them in one at a time. And Amesbury is the 5th to go in, and they're not fully in. They've been in the process of bringing Amesbury in for the past year, and they've had delay after delay after delay. We met most recently with the sheriff and his leadership at the rec in December, and they said that, once Amesbury is fully in, and they're trying to get Amesbury Fire in, I don't want to get it wrong in terms of how I explain it. I'm just going to read this. Okay. When as they're trying to bring in Amesbury Fire, and as they would try to bring in Beverly Fire, they need to get access to the fire stations and wire the fireboxes, fire alarms, and station signals. And that's, so there's hardware and software and infrastructure that all needs to be addressed. They had said to us in December, we think we'll have Amesbury on by the end of the calendar year. After that, it'll take us about 120 days to be ready for your fire operations to come on. I'm not sure that I would have confidence in the number 120 based on all the delays they've had. But that's kind of moot, because as of today, they don't have, or as of 2 days ago when we last checked, as of Tuesday or Wednesday of this week, they still did not have Amesbury Fire in. So they're not ready to even contemplate, I think, at this point, taking us on.
What do you think has caused these delays? Can you tell us a little bit more about what may have caused them, or do you have visibility of that?
The work that needs doing just takes time in any given instance. They had a couple of delays with Amesbury because they needed to erect a signal tower. They got hung up in permitting issues, and that took longer than it should have. But I think probably the more relevant point is this: we're almost 5 years into a 5-year agreement. They're not ready for us, and they won't be ready for us until, I would predict, at least until after the term of the agreement is over, which would be the end of June of this year.
So let me ask you. So we've had this agreement with them about 5 years. Have we been paying them any money? And if we have, and if we don't go in with the RECC, does that mean that those are sunk costs we can't recover? Or tell us about that. Explain that to our.
Well, thanks for the question. We haven't spent any money over there yet.
Okay.
We couldn't. It wouldn't be responsible to pay here to deliver the service to our residents and visitors and workers. To pay to deliver the service here and to pay them when they're not delivering anything would make no sense. So no, we would not owe any money over there until and unless we went over. Now, what's happened just this week is that on Monday, the REC issued a press release stating that they were done with us, and they're moving ahead and planning for their next fiscal year and moving forward without Beverly. We have had significant concerns with their ability to deliver services the way we need them. For me, everything that I've looked at with the REC and with our ability to deliver emergency call and dispatch services and their ability has centered around making sure that the public safety needs of our people who live here, go to school here, work here, and the public safety needs of our emergency first responders, ambulance, fire, police, that they're met. Now that people in Beverly are safe, whether they're a victim or need services in a call, or whether they're being sent out to answer a call. And that's where we've had really grave concerns. And given that the REC has made their decision to move on without us, we are looking at other alternatives, and we have been for some time.
So, having said what you just said, where does the city go from here? What are our alternatives?
With all the delays and with the concerns, and we've met with leadership at the REC numerous times, and they've tried to be forthcoming with data and with protocols and information, but we've had real concerns. Those concerns haven't been really satisfied to date. So, at some point, we started looking at what would be our alternatives to going there. One would be status quo, but I think a better alternative would be to take our fire dispatch and our police call taking and dispatch, which handles the ambulance, and combine them. So we're looking very seriously at combining our own operations internally and having them run by civilian dispatch employees. Right now, on the fire side, they have civilian fire alarm operators, but on the police side, it's uniformed officers who man the phones and answer the calls. So if we don't go to the REC, we will be pursuing a combined police, fire, civilian employee dispatch system here in Beverly.
And what kind of effect on costs would that have?
Well, we've been working through a cost-benefit analysis, comparing costs that would accrue with going to the REC versus costs that would accrue with staying and doing it on our own. That analysis isn't complete, but it seems to be showing us that we can save money and deliver a high-quality, I believe, better service by combining and staying here, as opposed to what we have and as opposed to going to the REC.
Well, very good. Thank you, Mike, for bringing us up to date on those two issues that have just kind of come up here very recently. But I do want to, I'd be remiss if I didn't give you an opportunity. We're here, and it's hard to believe it's been a year that you've been in office, almost to the week, right?
I know.
I want to give you an opportunity to kind of, I know you've been doing a lot, and I know you're continuing to do, your administration is continuing to do a lot for the city. What have been some of the more memorable things and experiences in 2014 for you, Mike?
It's been a great year. It's been a fast year. No, it's been fast. It's been exciting and fun and challenging. I think we've in 1 year's time we've accomplished some very, I think, impressive things. We applied to the state to get the DPA lifted, and they've agreed. The Brimble Avenue project, it was handed over in good shape, and yet at the same time, the state ended up having real concerns about the idea of swapping land with the CEA group that owns the parcel on Brimble and taking ownership of a road that would have been built on a former landfill. So they ultimately in April told us, no, go back to the starting line, scrap everything and start over. And we had to get everything done in a very compressed time in order to ensure that we got all the approvals in place to get the $5 million grant from the state, which we nailed down, and I signed, and the Secretary of Economic Development co-signed, and we got in hand around middle of December. So it was a hard push, but we were able to put the project out to bid, and it'll start in the spring. Other infrastructure work, we were able to spend $3 million on our roads and sidewalks. Now, we haven't spent it all. We got as much work as we could get done before the winter, and we've got more to do in the spring. And we've got a real need. We've got a significant need for paving and sidewalks, and we'll chip away as best we can, but we're able to put real resources into it this year. Lots of other things that I'm excited about our downtown. Earlier on this year, there was a bit of a concern that, well, Casa de Moda's closing, Cabot Cinema's closing, downtown, what's going to happen downtown? Well, those were two generational transitions with ownerships who had really stewarded those businesses for a long time. And a lot of people have done great work, and I've been happy to try to chip in and help out with the Cabot, and I think things are going fantastic there. Casa de Moda, we got a new landlord, local businessman bought it. We've got a great local business that is now going to double their size. Atomic Cafe's moving across the street into the Casa de Moda building, doubling in size, getting a beer, wine, and cordial license, getting an entertainment license. They're bringing a bookstore with them from Newburyport that is going to have a shared doorway between the two businesses. I mean, these are the kinds of things they're going to bring our downtown back in a great way. There's a lot more, but I see you looking at the timekeeper.
No, and not actually. But what I wanted to also, along with that look backward, I want to kind of give you an opportunity to kind of say what you might think, what you think 2015 will be like. What do our citizens have to look forward to? Sure.
Well, as I said with the waterfront, we hope to have the new zoning in place sometime in the next few months, and we'll be able to start, really planning for how that waterfront may change and may improve. We will see significant construction this year, both with the Brimble Avenue project, that being our roadway project, and the Route 1A project from the Beverly-Salem Bridge down to Gloucester Crossing, left over to Dairy Queen. All that construction will start. The middle school project is moving along very well. We are going to be appearing before the Mass School Building Authority's Board of Directors in late March to get their approval on our preferred schematic design, which we will be putting in front of them a preference of building the new school at Memorial. And I believe we're still looking at entirely new construction versus a renovation addition. And I believe at this point we're leaning heavily towards an entirely new construction. What we've found is the cost of renovation addition is trending to be more expensive than entirely new construction. So there's a lot to happen there, but the goal is that we get into the schematic design phase with the approval of the board in late March, and we then spend the next several months doing the schematic design, and by the fall we should have what they call the project scope and budget agreement, meaning we'll have agreed on the size, the budget ceiling, and we'll be able to the state and the city will each know what our share will be, and we can make that agreement and move forward.
Well, just a little devil's advocate question. If that would mean raising the current building, right? So I know there are a lot of tenants there, plus there's some city departments over there. What do you do with those while that building is?
Yeah, no, plans are ongoing. The main tenant, other than ourselves, is our collaborative, our special education collaborative, which is every school district needs to be part of a regional collaborative. It's state law. So our collaborative has been renting space for Recovery High School at Memorial. They've also been renting the whole McEwen school building. And we informed them last summer that we would need them out of Memorial and out of McEwen sometime next school year. And to be, we had to be fair to them and let them know. We wouldn't necessarily need them out July 1, but somewhere along the way. So they have made other plans, and they are now going to be the only tenant in the Kaiser manufacturing building at the corner of Sawyer Road and Reservoir Road, right up the hill from the high school. So they'll be out. We're going to move our preschool classes into McEwen for next school year. We're going to move our school department central administration offices into McEwen. Our city offices, we're looking now for where else we can go within the city. They'll become tenants in some other space.
Yeah, exciting, very exciting.
I also have to tell you very quickly, we have a lot of exciting public facilities work that we've been doing. Lynch Park will have a new bathhouse before the summer.
Right.
Lynch Park Carriage House will have the new windows that have been promised for some time before the booking season starts for weddings and other functions. Dane Street Beach will have new internal bathroom fixtures in all three, the men's, the women's, and the handicapped and family changing room bathroom. Aubert Park and Riles Side will have a new bathhouse. And the Brown Building down in the waterfront, we're working hard to complete that project so that there'll be access to public restrooms in there prior to the summer season. Right. We need to make sure that when people want to get outside and enjoy our parks and beaches and our waterfront, that they have the facilities they need.
And I might mention that along with the improvements at Lynch Park, BevCam will have a live drop at the band shell, so that
that'll be great.
Come homecoming and the Lobster Fest and all those activities down there, we'll be able to not only broadcast those, tape those, but broadcast those live to the citizens of Beverly.
But we still want people to come down and join us in person.
Of course, yeah. So, Mike, thank you very much. And I'd just like to remind our viewers that you have been watching A City Scene with Mayor Mike Cahill. I'm your host, Walt Kosmowski. Thank you for watching.
Thanks, Walt.